Who that from Greece asks, with the benefit of hindsight, was letting Terron Armstead go the Saints' biggest mistake in the post-Drew Brees era?
It's an interesting question. I mean, I think in the short term, you could kind of make a little bit of that argument because it led to him leaving, and then you end up drafting Penning kind of based on need. So it led you into that a little bit. But on the flip side, Armstead has only played, he played 13 games his first year in Miami, only 10 last year. So you're still in that. You'd be paying somebody that's a little bit iffy health-wise, given where they're at. But I think that you can make the argument for it, just given that it's their biggest need, and they made a pick to try to replace him that could end up, to this point, is giving them nothing. So it's a complicated question.
Yeah.
But I think it's definitely something someone could definitely make an argument that it's been one of the more damaging things that has happened to the team. Because if you keep Armstead, you probably backstop him with like James Hurst. James Hurst is retiring. You'd probably go out and get like a cheaper player to kind of replace him. You're probably still in the market for Fuaga, but I think you probably feel a lot better about your team if you're getting something out of that draft pick from that class, or maybe they just don't make that trade at all. So it's something that prevents what I think ended up becoming a bigger mistake.
That's really funny because I think I settled on as my answer to the question. Well, the answer to my question is not drafting Pat Mahomes, which is kind of cheap. Every team should have drafted Mahomes, but we know how close they really came. And they ended up with Marshawn Lattimore, which is probably their best player acquisition of the last however many years, or one of the top ones. So, but still, not drafting Patrick Mahomes when one little trade up would have got it done. But I was thinking the Penning trade is a real candidate for this. And when you tie those together, if you re-sign Terron Armstead, as you said, maybe you don't draft Trevor Penning. When you combine those two together, I think it's the yes to this question. What I was going to say though is, how many more games do you think they win the last 2 years if they get Armstead's 23 games over the last 2 years? They went 7-10, 9-8. Do they win the division both years? Do they get one more win? Yeah, I think their offensive line play was probably the worst part of the team in both years.
Yeah, they might have won a game. They might have won another game, or like maybe the group's better overall. Look, there's a cascading effect too with Armstead in that he's a great teacher. Like people go out to Duke Manyweather's camp, and like Terron's one of the guys that goes around and is kind of like a camp counselor, so to speak, like an extension of that coaching. So maybe just other players are better because he's around too. So yeah, I think they probably could win another game somewhere along the lines. To touch on your point, I just got to say it, man. Like every time now this Mahomes thing comes up, it comes with the retelling of this story. And the retelling of the story is that the Saints went there on a stealth plane that was untrackable on the cover of night, that nobody knew they were out there. And then like it was like, well, that's why Atlanta, they did their thing with drafting the quarterback, and it was so quiet. And I'm sure Terry Fontenot did learn from it, but it wasn't because of this like super silent operation. Sean Payton took pictures that were on social media from their campus that led people like me and Mike to make calls to say, hey, is he out there working out Mahomes? And then people said, yes, he is. And then it gets reported. It was a loud thing. And they stopped, like, you took a picture. Like, the picture is why everybody knew. It wasn't like it leaked out. Like, no, there was photographic evidence that the staff was on their campus. And that's how we all knew that he was working them out.
Yeah, you just did you did your job. You weren't like the feds or nothing like that had them
Look,
tapped.
I mean, the
picture did the job. I didn't do anything.
And look, the Saints drafted quarterback 2 years earlier. It was Garrett Grayson, but I mean, like, they made no secret that they were in the business of scouting quarterbacks every year. They were scouting Jared Goff. They were working out. I mean, they were working out with first-round prospects all the time. Maybe nobody thought they were going to actually pull the trigger because Drew Brees was still about 37 years old. But yeah, like they weren't going to get him with secrecy.
I just hate how it gets retold that it was like this like stealth operation. It's like, no, it wasn't.
No, it wasn't. Yeah. But I did have other candidates for this. The thing about the only counter argument I would say to Terron is I think Terron would have made you a game better each of the last 2 years, and you might have won the division each of the last. Honestly, Terron might have made them good enough to get that one more win and win the division each of the last 2 years. I don't know if I can say that about Trey Hendrickson. Maybe you can make the same argument. with Trey Hendrickson.
Trey's a good one. Trey's a good one.
Trey's a
Yeah,
real good one.
because the defensive end position has faded in the last couple of years, and he would have made it a lot better. And Trey Hendrickson's still a fairly young player, so I'd feel better about their future too, which almost makes him a candidate ahead of Terron. But I'm thinking a little bit more about how this roster's just gotten a lot older. I don't know how much having Terron Armstead on this team would make me feel better about where they are now and where they're going. So I lean more towards how much they paid to get those 2 first-round picks a couple years ago and using one of them on Penning, or using the 2 first-rounders on Marcus Davenport and having him not work out, when instead you could have had 2 different players that are maybe building blocks for this team. I think missing on first-round picks and doubling up your resources to, trade, a first and a second for a guy or 2 firsts for a guy, and having them not hit is what has hurt this team the most, I think.
I don't even know what they would have done with that 19th pick. Part of me feels like they might have ended up drafting Kenny Pickett there or something.
Well, no, here's what I think they would have done. So there's 2 different things. First of all, they had the 18th pick. So let's say they never make a trade at all. They have the 18th pick. So maybe they would have taken Penning anyway. But I think they would have traded up for Olave anyway. It might have been a little more expensive, but I mean, Olave is the guy they obviously wanted. They moved up from 16 to 11 to get Olave. I think they would have moved up from 18 to 11 to get Olave. And I'm just saying, don't have that be your only first-round pick. And then the next year, have the 10th pick in the draft. That ended up being Jalen Carter or whatever. I don't like that they spent so much money to get 2 first-round picks that year, and one of them was Penning.
And the thing is, again, they did that ahead of time. So it was they just wanted the picks. So
it's almost like a financial decision.
I almost don't they might have still made the same trade. I have no idea what they were actually targeting at 19. I don't know if it was Penning. I don't know if it was someone else. I don't know if it was just, hey, one of these players is going to be there and we don't care who it is. We're making 2 picks this year. So they still might have made the same exact trade beforehand. Because I don't know. I can't say for sure that it wasn't Penning specific, but it might have been. It might have been.